Hello everyone and welcome back to a best of 5 series of professional StarCraft 2. Now what I've got for you today is a rather special Terran versus Zerg. I'll talk about that in just a little bit. Let's get started like we always do by introducing the players. So spawning here in the top right hand corner of 2000 atmospheres, playing with the blue SCVs from South Korea, we have none other than Maru. And his opponent in the opposite corner with the red Zerg drones, he goes by the name of Serral. And Serral, of course, is from Finland. Now here's the thing, Maru is widely considered to be the strongest Korean StarCraft 2 player of all time. He's been playing this game ever since it first came out. I remember watching him in the GSL Code S way back in 2010 when he was like 12, 13 years old. He's always been at the top of the game, he's always been winning tournaments left, right, and center. He's always been very, very good. Serral, on the other end, is widely considered to be the strongest non-Korean StarCraft 2 player of all time. Now, obviously, these two, they play in a variety of tournaments, they play in the biggest events, and you'd imagine that they face off against each other regularly. Now, here's the kicker. They've only really faced off against each other a couple of times, especially when it comes to premier tournaments. So, this particular series is from Aces ROG, which was played last weekend. If you're watching this video, well, I guess in the week that it goes up. But they've really only played against each other a handful of times. So, Serral started dominating StarCraft 2 back in 2018. They did play, I think, twice in like 2017 and 2016 or so. Those series were won by Maru, just because Serral wasn't at his peak yet. However, in 2018, when like Serral was at his peak, and I would say Maru was also at his peak, and once again, by the way, these guys are looking really strong. Serral currently sitting at like 7.4k MMR on the ladder. Obviously, he had that really good showing at the DreamHack finals as well. In case you haven't seen the finals, I'll leave a link to it down below in the description of this video. But regardless, in 2018, they kind of like made the matchup happen because everyone was waiting for it, and they kept dodging each other in tournaments. So in GSL versus the World, Serral played Maru in a best-of-1 series. I mean, it's a best-of-1. It's just a single map. So that ended up being won by Serral, 1-0. Then in 2020, so a couple of years later, in an Alpha X tournament, they faced off against each other in a best-of-3 series. That one was also won by Serral. Then in the TSL 6, which I think is about a year or so ago at this point, Serral ended up winning 3-0 in a best-of-5. And then back in June, so a few months ago, they faced off against each other in a best-of-3 series, which was won also by Serral, 2-0. So, as far as I can tell, this is really only the second time that they're playing a proper best-of-5 series. Which is, yeah, kind of ridiculous. It's one of those matchups that people at some point just didn't expect anymore. Like, every single time there was a tournament where they should face off against each other, they ended up dodging each other. So, anyways, I think that's enough. I think that's about enough introduction for this particular game. I haven't seen the series yet. I do know who ends up winning this because, you know, I like watching StarCraft 2 tournaments. So, you know, I ended up watching one of the later rounds of this particular events. So, you know, I know who ends up winning it. But regardless, I think we should be in for a treat. Looks like Mr. Maru is bringing back a good old standard. So, for the longest time in this particular matchup, in Terran versus Zerg, and really in all matchups that Terran play, they've been playing the 1-1-1, where you go for 1 barracks, 1 factory. I don't think the Reaper's gonna get out. Where you go for the 1 barracks, into 1 factory, and then into a starport. Maru is going for what is called the 2-1-1, where you go 2 barracks, 1 factory, 1 starport. Now, obviously, this does allow you to get eventually a bunch of starport units out, but it's going to be quite a bit later. And usually with this sort of opener, since you're so heavily focused on Marines early on, you're kind of forced to go into medivacs, and that really is what I'm expecting here as well from Maru. So normally what you do is you pump out about 16 Marines. You can put them into 2 medevacs, so 2 medevacs have enough slots for 16 Marines to fit. Then you can hit Stimpak on your opponent's side of the map at about the 5-minute mark, 5 minutes and 10 seconds, depending on the size of the map and how well you execute it. Now, obviously, this is Maru, so it's going to be executed absolutely perfectly. That would be a little bit, yeah, a little bit surprising if he's going to be delayed as well. This is one of those builds that's really fallen out of the meta a little bit because Zerg players got so good at defending it. So generally speaking, if Zerg knows what's going on, which at this point, Serral, yeah, he does know. He sees the double reactor, so that should really give him all the info. He may have already spotted a bunch of additional Marines as well. Seeing any more than 1, well, at the very least, he's going to find out right now. Seeing any more than 1 is, yeah, uncommon at this stage in the game. Normally, it's Hellions roaming the map into like a Liberator or a Banshee. He knows that it's going to be 16 Marines that will be able to hit him in the face if he's not careful. Now, what people used to do, and I'm a little bit surprised right here by the response of Serral, he's going for the lair as well as the Baneling Nest. So one of the reasons I believe why this build kind of fell out of the meta a little bit is because Zerg players really got very good at defending it, and going for the double Evo chambers before going for the lair really allowed Zerg to get a nice little upgrade lead. In this particular case, though, I mean, I'm sure Serral has a lot of practice against this particular build as well, even in 2021, even though it might not be as popular. He has decided to go for the lair quickly together with that Baneling Nest, which will allow him to get Banelings out, obviously. And it will also allow him to get that Baneling speed going really early on here as well. Yeah, so perfect zoning here so far by Serral. And if you look right now at the resources lost, yeah, not a whole lot was killed. I mean, 3 Overlords ended up going down here, which is a little much. A little bit more than you're hoping for here as Serral, but he's not really taking any damage. You can see right here, he continues droning, which puts him in a phenomenal position as far as I can tell. Right, we're currently already at 60 plus workers for Zerg. Terran's a little bit late, obviously, on the 3rd CC. Because he's forced to pump out all of those Marines, so he doesn't really have the money for it. Widowmine was added into the mix here as well, which I quite like. Good control here, though, by the Zerg player. Maru trying to bait him into that Widowmine range. Finally, a Queen ends up going down. Oh no, Brenda. Oof. Very dramatic shot of Brenda floating to the surface of 2000 Atmos. Either way, triple medevac harassment right now. So, rumor on the street has it that I haven't really seen a lot of, I guess not on the street. Rumor on the internet has it that Maru has been bringing back the 2-1-1 opener. I don't know if he's going to be playing it more in this particular series, but apparently he has been very fond of this build once again. I thought if any, like, Terran player was going to bring it back, it would be Björn, or maybe even Klim. Anyways, Maru, yeah, forced to back off right now. So was that really a net bonus or net benefit for him? I'm not 100% sure. I mean, the real advantage here is that the upgrades for Zerg are quite late. Right, Baneling speed is done though, so it's going to be very difficult to really get anything out of this siege tank over here as well. Beautiful creep spread here by the Zerg player as well, which makes it extremely difficult for the Terran player to actually go for some continued harassment here. We know that there's a couple of nice siege tank locations right over here, for example, where you can put the siege tanks in that spot and then harass the base at the 6 o'clock position. Wouldn't be surprised to see a counterattack, actually. I think a counterattack right now would be really good with these Zerglings at the 3rd. Okay, instead he's going to morph in a couple of Banelings for now. Yeah, so the siege tank does get into that spot eventually. We're already at 10 queens, by the way, which is quite a lot. I'm surprised he's even allowing his opponent to get into this position. Well, there is a surround being set up right now, though, by the finisher. Hatchery is running dangerously low. Transfuses, though, are going to keep it all alive. Nice target firing right there as well by Maru. Manually clicking on those Banelings to try and detonate as many of those as he possibly can. And so far, this has been a, yeah, pretty clean game, all things considered here for Serral. The only thing I don't really like for him right now is that he hasn't really been able to go past the 60 drone count very effectively. So only just now is when we see additional workers coming up. Maru has been uncontested. Right, he's got the 3rd CC up and running. I think there was room right there for a counterattack. However, Serral decided to leave all the units at home. Obviously, Serral is one of the few players that feels really comfortable playing late game. So it's not too surprising that he's not trying to get a whole lot of damage done here in the early to mid stages of the game. But I feel like if this would have been Raynor, there definitely would have been a couple of Lings and Banes inside of that base, right? Especially with the amount of army that Serral has been producing in this game so far. Maru opting to go for a single NG Bay, it looks like here early on. Either that or he made a mistake, which I find hard to believe. He's just transitioning right now towards the 2nd factory. And yeah, he's just trying to harass his opponent to the best of his abilities. He managed to force a council right here at the base at the 9 o'clock position. But this is the moment where the game gets very dangerous for Terran, though, because Zerg will basically try to take control of the entire map if they can, right? Zerg units, of course, much faster than Terran units. I mean, bio units are not slow. But with the creep spread constantly being pushed forward, at some point, you know, Serral is going to try and cover the entirety of the map. And if he can spread creep all the way to the natural of the Terran player, that would be a bit of a disaster. Alright, so there's the hive coming up. Couple additional hatcheries also being built. We see 5 more barracks on the production tab. How many barracks is that going to be? So we're already at 5. He's going to go 10 barracks? Oh my god. It's a lot of barracks, guys. It's a lot of barracks. This position over here is very difficult to clean up without Banelings. Banelings a little bit slower than the Lynx, but they're going to be able to get over here as well. Looks like Serral is going to try and give the Terran player a taste of their own medicine with some Baneling mines. Definitely something that can be annoying. Zergling over here, burrowed right next to the CC. Okay, so what exactly is the Zerg's action plan? Usually in these kind of games, right? So, generally speaking, what we see Zerg players do is expand very aggressively and then try to deny the Terran opponent as many bases as possible. Nice little drop right here on the left side of the map. Generally speaking, it's going to be hard to deny a third and a fourth base for Terran. So even though Serral managed to delay that fourth for at least a little bit, I do expect that the fourth is going to go up eventually. However, on most maps, it's very difficult for Terran players to actually take a fifth. Right? So there's a fifth, I guess, that you can take over here, which is kind of far out there. And there's also one over here that's also quite far out there. Basically, what I'm trying to get at is that Serral is likely going to try and take his entire side of the map and then soft contain the Terran player on just a small amount of bases. So if you can keep the Terran player occupied on 4 bases, obviously eventually those bases will run out. As a matter of fact, at the 11-minute mark right now, the main base is already starting to run low. Natural is not going to be too far behind, especially when Terrans play, you know, pretty command center heavy. They're going to have a lot of mules to drop. Oof. This does not seem like that great of a fight. Adrenal gland's not done just yet, although Serral, you know what? Yep, no. I don't think that was that great, to be honest. Yeah, he's hitting right before a bunch of upgrades are about to finish. Those siege tanks dealing a lot of damage. Interestingly enough, actually, Maru opting to go for pretty heavy siege tanks here, rather than going for Widow Mines. I feel like Widow Mines have been the bane of, well, both Serral and Raynor and Dark and Rogue and all of the... I was going to start with only 2 Zerg players there, but I guess all of the top-level Zerg players have been struggling against Widow Mines quite a bit. But yeah, at this point, Maru is on 4 bases. Serral is, well, already sitting at a nice 5th expansion right here on the left side. So if Serral can continue this game by denying the Terran player ever a 5th base, eventually Maru is either going to have to go for an all-out assault, and usually that means going onto the creep, right, which is great for the Zerg, or he's going to make a desperation, like, expansion move, right? Those are both very viable options. Ultralisks are being produced here. Drilling Claws is coming up as well eventually, so I quite like that. How many siege tanks are we on? We're at 9 siege tanks, only 2 Widow Mines. But I think Maru may very well be thinking about going for another Widow Mine transition here very soon. That's why he's got triple factory. Oh, he's got the 3rd factory added on right now. I like it. So a triple factory, you can make the transition from... Oh god, Widow Mine. Yep, he's not expecting Widow Mines at this point in the game. He's expecting siege tanks. You can go for a mix of tanks as well as Widow Mines, I guess, when you have triple factory producing here all the time. Not bad whatsoever. Alright. One problem I do foresee here for the Zerg, though... There's a couple of Banelings. Okay. One problem that I do foresee here for the Zerg is that he's never really gotten a huge amount of workers, right? It's very common in these kind of scenarios to see the Zerg player sitting at like 90 plus drones. And Serral has been sitting at like 70 to 80 for most of the time. Currently, apparently happy with 83 of them. It's not like he's got that many bases to mine from anyway, but... Anyways, here's going to be that attempt. I think it's going to be very important for the Zerg player to deny this expansion from Maru. If that expo goes up uncontestedly, then all of a sudden Terran's going to have all of the money in the late game here to transition towards, you know, their late game units. Now, what are their late game units? Generally speaking, we expect Ghosts, Liberators. More of like a mechy type of army, I suppose. There's a lot of Marauders already added into the mix as well, which I like. Those are obviously fantastic here for Maru to soak up a bunch of those, especially Baneling hits. Ultras, though, obviously also not that great against Marauders. He's being absolutely relentless, though, by that, or with that, rather, drop play. There's been drops going around the map everywhere. Serral's been holding on by the skin of his teeth. It's one bad connection away from, you know, losing an entire expansion worth. But, yeah, Maru's expansion here, at least on the 5th, does get denied. And Serral, while he's been forced to deny and cancel these bases for at least a little bit, it looks like this expansion is also going to finish up eventually. Spire will also be done here soon, so that's gonna allow the finisher right over here to add on some, for example, Corruptors. Corruptors are really nice when it comes to dealing with both the Liberators, but also to pick off those Medivacs that have already been wounded quite a bit by the parasitic bombs there of those Vipers. Man, there's so many siege tanks, though. It's very difficult to push in there. I love the Sim City here as well from Maru. It's going to be difficult for those Ultralisks to get into position. They're just too thick, man. Okay, good EMP over there as well, denying the energy right now on the Vipers. A couple of the Banelings do eventually... No, not connect with the Ghosts. They get evacuated just barely there in the nick of time inside of one of those Medivacs. 34... oh my god, 40 workers. 40 workers? Alright. So even though Maru does finish up the command center here on the top left-hand position of the map, he did lose 40 SCVs right there in the process. So even though Serral initially fought in this location, right? He denied the expansion once. Maru then sent a lot more units in that direction, and Serral ran to the other side instead to take out, I guess, a ton of workers here. Alright, so fantastic position right now for the Zerg player to be in. He's denying all of the... harassment here like a champion. And not really running into too many issues. Planetary Fortress is here, though. Okay, that was a massive Widowmine hit. It's going to be difficult to finish off this base, but, I mean, he's going to try. There are some Banelings available here as well. Okay. Getting out. Okay, he can out-DPS the healing right there from those SCVs and Mules. The Ghost Army is still climbing, though. Yeah, we're currently at 8 Marines and 9 Ghosts. So Ghosts, they have 2 skills that are very helpful here. First off, they have EMP, which allows them to basically remove energy out of those Vipers, which is, yeah, very helpful. And secondly, they have a skill called Steady Targeting, which allows them to take, well, especially the big hitters, like, for example, Ultralisks or Corruptors or Brute Lords, if they were to be here. Yeah, they can snipe them from a distance, which is very, very helpful. Serral apparently evacuating the Expo. Going towards the bottom right-hand corner, it seems, instead. We'll be able to kill that Widowmine as well before it detonates. There are Liberators in the air, but I mean, that's a lot of Zerglings. It's going to require a lot of shots, and more SCVs end up dying here. That's 10 more going down the drain. Drones in the meantime, these were the ones I think that were mining over here at the 9 o'clock position on the map. They have made their way all the way towards the bottom right-hand corner. There are still a lot of Mules available here, though, for the Terran player, right? So... yeah, he's going to be able to bring that income back up quite effectively. Even though he doesn't have as many SCVs as he probably would like to have, you can see that income-wise, it's not really that much of a disaster. Army-wise, Maru is still looking extremely dangerous, though. This is a very sophisticated Terran army. I would love to maybe see like an Infestor or 2 added into the mix here for Serral, because this is not that strong of a unit composition when it comes to fighting off creep, especially while he decides to jump on top of the army regardless. Blinding Clouds will be able to disable all those siege tanks for at least a little while. Couple of Banelings coming around the back as well, okay? This is a bit of a disjointed fight for the Zerg. Good splits right there, though, on the Ghosts. No detection available either, so these Ghosts obviously do have the ability to cloak as well. One Marine right here pretending to be a Ghost too. Doesn't have the cloaking ability, but that was a very expensive set of units there for the Zerg player to lose. And I almost wonder if that was maybe a bit of a miscalculation there for Serral. Serral didn't have a whole lot of money in the bank to instantly remax, and fighting off creep is one of the... yeah, one of the rules that you really don't want. Like, you don't want to fight off creep if you're a Zerg player, if you can at all avoid it. Pretty sure that could have been avoided there. Either way, that's giving Maru a bit of a fighting chance back into this game right now. Natural expansion obviously running very low. Third also running dangerously low. And the fourth is not going to be that far behind either. So Maru is, yeah, running out of fresh mineral patches to mine. Serral has reacquired the base over here. He's also taken the bottom right-hand corner once more. And he's really picked up the harassment at this point. But if you look at the bank, there's really not that much money here for Serral. He's got a lot of gas, though, so... yeah. I would like to see some Infestors, but I understand why Serral's not making them when your opponent already has this many Ghosts out. Even though he doesn't have the Ghost EMP upgrade. I mean, he could research that, obviously. Serral probably assumes he does have it. Either way, obviously, you know, Ghosts are... ooh, once again, a couple Banelings. Ghosts are very good when it comes to, well, dealing with most of the Zerg late-game units. They can snipe Ultras, they can... snipe Brute Lords. They can obviously EMP both Infestors as well as Vipers, as well as Queens, I guess, that come out quite regularly in the late game too. So, can't really blame Serral for not adding those on, but I do feel like, especially with this amount of gas, Having a couple of them would be really nice. I mean, one fungal right here on these ghosts, and then the Lings and Banes run in. Not a bad situation to be in. Okay. Once again, Zerglings over at the third base location as well. Maru is desperately trying to acquire the base in the top left. Command Center is currently burning out. Okay, a couple of Banelings are being burrowed here too, which is another way, I guess, of getting rid of those ghosts. Creep spread is not looking that great over here, and I don't really see that much of a Zerg army. With +3 upgrades, those Marines and Marauders bite through that expansion very quickly. Huge Baneling hit over there, or sorry, Widowmine hit as well on top of those Banelings, and once again, a base is being evacuated. Serral, in the meantime, I mean, he's now facing off against a Terran player that just secured another expo. Banelings over here, though, yeah, eventually they unburrowed, and they got 6 SCV kills, it looks like. How many workers have gone down? 69? Okay, nice. That's, yeah, I would say that's pretty nice. Base in the top left-hand corner, not morphed into a planetary fortress yet. At this point, that's becoming quite a big expense because Maru doesn't have that much money in the bank. All right. Oh my god. Yeah, I like the transition towards Widow Mines, man. The siege tanks early on made a lot of sense, but eventually, once you're, you know, quite secure with your bases, I really don't mind the idea of transitioning towards the Widow Mines because they just seem to hit home, right? They just deal so much damage. Once again, this awkward nuke in the bottom right-hand corner. Not enough creep over here to properly control most of this. Cloak once again activated right there on those ghosts. And they're going to be able to snipe down whatever they can. Serral running out of money right now. He does still have 28 Zerglings on the production tab. But with the base gone in the bottom right-hand corner, I don't know exactly what's going on. Well, as far as the eco goes anyways, Maru did just lose another 13 SCVs in the... I guess, what is that? I don't know. The 12 o'clock. Right next to it. It's like the 11 o'clock base. Bunch of ghosts end up going down as well, but a few of them at the very least got evacuated inside of some of those medivacs. Widow Mines are still burrowed here. No detection available for the Zerg other than one Overseer that's currently heading on over towards the minefield in the top left-hand corner instead. Serral trying to spread a bunch of Zerglings here to try and detonate this. Widow Mine blocking that expo too. Bottom right-hand corner being reacquired. Oh, this is a nail-biter of a game. I actually don't know who's ahead here. Yeah, Maru actually now dealing with a burrowed Zergling. He's been dropping mules because he needs to get some of that money back, right? So he doesn't have a scan available to get rid of that one pesky Ling that's burrowed underneath the command center. Science still can't explain why a command center can't just land on a burrowed unit. I guess the foundation needs to be perfect, even though the command center seemed to be standing on little legs. Okay. Widow Mines in random positions are being cleaned up, but it's buying the Terran player a lot of time. Planetary Fortress morphing in as well, and this is a wonderful position, obviously, for the Zerg player. Or, sorry, for the Terran player. Oh, God, that Widow Mine. Man, it was not detonating forever there. Yeah, this is an anchor to fall back to, right? How exactly are you going to fight this if you're a Zerg? You're going to need a very large army in order to properly deal with that. Serral right now taking the mirrored base on his side. Maru tiptoeing around the creep at this point. He's building up some energy once again in his orbital commands. There is still the 3 o'clock expansion, right? That is, as far as I can tell, unmined. Okay. Maru apparently now cycling basically his entire army towards that bottom right-hand corner once again. It's a very dangerous move. But there's still not a lot of creep over here. It's going to be difficult for the Zerg player to get a good engagement without the creep. Okay, finally a few infestors are being added into the mix as well. Ooh, how much army is there for the Zerg player? I'm not really seeing that much. Zerglings do manage to get the wraparound right there on a bunch of the Marines. EMP once again lands on top of all of the Vipers. And Serral recognizes that he cannot clean up that army. That means 2 new expansions in the bottom right-hand corner of the map would be killed. And Maru just obviously secured that base in the top left-hand corner. Alrighty. And even though Serral still had a couple of bases here and there, he didn't have enough money anymore to stay in that game. Maru obviously just secured that planetary fortress as well in the top left-hand corner. Not all the way in the top left, but the one base below that. which I quite like, because in a way, if you get that expansion up and running, the one in the top left-hand corner, like all the way in the top left-hand corner, would be much easier to acquire, right? Anyways, since Serral didn't have any income anymore, he knew that Maru would be able to remax over the course of the next 5 minutes or so, and he decides to step out. So we're in game number 2 right here on Oxide. Not really expecting any crazy build orders, by the way, from either of these two players. I mean, in a way, they're kind of playing their builds, right? Hatch gas pool. One of the reasons why it's considered to be the standard is because of Serral. And one of the reasons why the barracks expansion into 1-1-1, right? Or maybe he's going to play 2-1-1 again. But one of the reasons why those builds are the standard is because of these guys, right? Because of them. So even though I know a lot of you would love to see a couple of, you know, proxy barracks on the other side of the map, or I don't know, a one-base Ravager all-in or something along those lines, I don't really see it happening. No, I don't really see it happening in this particular series. Hatch gas pool once again here from the Zerg. Maru probably will be sending this SCV towards the low ground soon enough. Or he will send another one and use this one for scouting instead, but he'll probably go for the expansion here very shortly. Yep. So this one is going to be scouting. New SCV is going to come from the main base. Mine some minerals. And then he's going to start up his second command center. There it is. Alright. Orbital command, of course, is coming up as well. A Reaper will be sent across. It's going to use the little jump up pad over here to get across the map ever so slightly quicker. Doesn't make much of a difference, but obviously it's a very annoying unit to keep around. I would like to see Maru actually trying to block the third base, although Serral's actually not too well known, yeah, to pull the drones out. So I would say about half the top-level Zerg players, they, generally speaking, pull 2 drones out of gas at 60 gas, only to then start up Zergling speed a little bit later, but to opt for a quicker third expansion. Serral, generally speaking, leaves the drones in gas until 100, or until 100. Makes it a little bit difficult to get the third base up, at the very least if the Reaper goes in that direction right away. Serral, though, hit the drone to the left base, the triangular base instead, and he's going to be able to get it up uncontested. Interesting position, though, for a third. I feel like 9 times out of 10 we see the Zerg players taking the expansion over here instead. Maybe because of that 100 gas, he knew that the Reaper would be going on over in that direction, and he couldn't plant the third hatch before the Reaper would arrive. So maybe he kind of felt like he had to go for this spot instead, although could have tried to, like, you know, hide the drone in one of those locations. So I'm gonna make the assumption Serral does opt to go for this one here instead. Maybe to just try and throw the opponent off ever so slightly. Speaking of throwing the opponent off ever so slightly, once again, we have the same build. A 2-1-1 opener here from Maru. Huh. I'm gonna keep an eye out here on the Zerg's vision. So there's an Overlord all the way here on the right side. He hasn't seen much. If Serral autopilots and just assumes it's gonna be a 1-1-1 every time, and he once again goes for the lair and the Baling Nest, and God forbid, I guess, even some Spore Crawlers, that would not be great. It is the build we have seen so many times over the couple of years that StarCraft 2 has been around with the Legacy of the Void meta, right? The 1-1-1 is just so common that, yeah, you don't really expect the 2-on-1 necessarily. Anyways. I don't think it really matters too much, though. Like, Serral found himself in a really good spot regardless in game number 1. I think that game kind of went south there for the Finnish player when the fight happened off creep in the bottom right-hand corner. Remember that fight? Like, the creep was never really there in the bottom right-hand corner in the first place. I think it should have been. So maybe that was already an error. He also never really droned up to, like, 85, 90-ish workers that I would have liked to see. I think he would have had a little bit more money in the bank. At the very least, his income was not as clean as it could have been. He was sitting at, you know, like 5,000 gas and barely any mineral income. There was something that was a little lopsided there. Anyways, 4 minutes and 30 seconds on the third CC. Serral at this point knows what he's going up against. Well, he should know at the very least roughly what he's going up against, because once again, if you see the reactor right here on the starport, it basically has to be a 2-1-1. Second medevac a little bit later. Alright. And once again, yeah, Serral just opting to go for that lair together with the Baling Nest. Okay. So he's just gonna go for his default approach that he plays against 1-1-1 as well, if I'm not mistaken. I've seen him play this build dozens of times against other Terran players. So I guess this is just his new, you know, his new comfort zone. I would love to see the double upgrades variant first, where you go for the double evos into 1-1 and then eventually a lair with a Baneling's Nest. Either way, it's a lot of queens. Yeah. Just queens and a couple of Zerglings, man. So Serral now also playing it ever so slightly greedier here. I think he made about 30 Zerglings in total. Well, that expo is not going to happen like this, my man. Nope, nope, nope. Okay, he does cancel. So there's the double evo. So he is going for, I think, a bit of a quicker double. Maybe not. I think the timing actually may be identical. Yeah, so he made about 30 Zerglings, and then he started back up to droning right away. Okay. I would like to see Maru once again go heavily into siege tanks like he did last game. If I'm not mistaken, he made about 9 of those in total before ultimately making the switch towards Widow Mines. Especially on a map like Oxide, there's a couple of very good siege tank positions once again. That one Widow Mine added into the mix as well with the second medevac, or the third medevac rather though. The second, I guess, group of Marines is really nice! Woo! Good stuff. Okay, eventually a little bit of a slip up right there by Maru. Overstaying is welcome ever so slightly. Maybe we can write that one up to ping. In case you're unfamiliar, whenever there's a... currently, since the tournaments obviously are being played online, whenever there's Korea facing off against Europe, they play on the North American servers, which is equally bad for the both of them. Even with 150 ping, though, those little differences, yeah, they do add up. So maybe that's why Maru picked up a little late there. Can imagine, though, on the Korean server, right? Or if they were both on the same server, that wouldn't have happened. Either that or he made a mistake, but I can't imagine that. Nah, that can't be. Yeah, so is this 2-1-1 really putting the Terran in that great of a spot? One of the reasons, by the way, why Baneling speed rushed out is so good is because of Baneling roll buys. Okay. Baneling roll buy is a little bit late. Baneling speed is already finished. Normally, we want to see that basically as soon as Baneling speed finishes, because right now it gives Terran a little bit of time to build up more infrastructure. There is one little change thing over here, though. Giving the Zerg player all of the vision that he needs. Okay. Couple of siege tanks once again. Looks like the Overseer ended up getting killed. It does scout the barracks transition. Here go the Banelings. Okay, this is... That's good. That's good for the Zerg. Felt like he could have gotten a little bit more there, maybe, but... Guess there were a few mules on that as well, I think. I don't know. Okay. I don't know the timing of the second factory that he went for in the previous game exactly, but I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, so once again, look, this is what I was talking about. I think he could have done this in the previous game too. So now we're seeing some actual counterattack damage here early on, and this puts Serral in a really good position. I mean, cleaning this up is going to be rather tricky. He really wants to get that tank on the low ground. Wonder if he's overextending for that one a little bit, though. Yeah, I think that may have been a bit much. Serral does lack a little bit of larva here. Okay, finally he does spend the additional money. Maru here on top of the macro, because obviously he is, because he's Maru. Would love to see a scan over here, get rid of some of that creep to prevent run-bys and surrounds from being set up. Okay, a couple of Zerglings there. Oh, he's trying to create a chokehold on the 6 o'clock base. I like it. Once again, Zerglings going in for the counterattack. Man, those queens are buying so much time. Here come the Banelings. They really want to connect, but beautiful control right there by Maru. Or lack thereof, I suppose. Holding his ground is super difficult. Eventually, though, the siege tanks are gone, which I think means the Zerg should be able to clean all of this up eventually. Yeah. The Queen's not really target firing down the medevacs very much, although the medevacs at this point are very low on health. Maru just rallying in as many units as he possibly can. 2-2 was just started up as well for the Zerg player. Same can be said for the Terran. Both players just, yeah, preparing themselves for a later stage in this game. But honestly, it feels like the fight is happening for this 6 o'clock expansion. If this one falls, it's going to be difficult for the Zerg player. Well, I guess he's taking the base over there as well. On the minimap, that is. Okay, once again, trying to set up a surround. Man, the way that Maru keeps his units alive is actually absurd. I felt like this fight was going to be cleaned up when like all of those Marines were stuck in that little corner. Right now, the Queens are starting to fall. A couple of the drones are pulled away as well. Serral apparently feels like he is in trouble. Liberator goes down. Siege Tank also gets picked off, but the rally point for all of those Terran reinforcements is set towards the other side of the map. And eventually, after like a 5-minute long battle, the 6 o'clock base for the Zerg player does fall. Even though there were a lot of SCV kills on the other side of the map, Maru has had plenty of time to rebuild those. Okay. Man, he's getting insane value out of these Marines. It's actually ridiculous. Wait, is that the original? Is the Reaper still around? Is that the OG Reaper? I think it might just be. Yeah, there's no Reaper kill on the map. Or on the units lost screen, rather. If you look at the resources lost, though, at this point, look at that. 228 Zerglings have gone down. New Terran reinforcements heading on over towards the newly acquired base by the Zerg player. Serral once again finding himself in a tough spot. Maru actually made a 4th command center during all of that. This really did feel like a 3-base all-in to me, but Maru apparently just, I don't know. Made differently, man. I don't know how he does it. It feels like he's got units from a 3-base all-in. But I guess that's because he's keeping those Marines alive for such a long time. Like, most Terran players will accidentally take one of those banelings to the face. And then, yeah, you find yourself with... Like, these little mistakes, I mean, those are not the ones Maru's making, right? Maru, once again, picks up the units. Serral, basically, every single time he gets close to them... Okay, there are a couple of burrowed Banes. But every single time he gets close to the Marines, he's kind of crossing his fingers and hoping the Terran player doesn't pick up. And so far, it seems to me like Maru has picked up every single time. Zerg extremely reliant on the creep. So it's gonna be difficult to really... Okay, looks like there was a Baneling detonation over here too. Maybe a couple of burrowed Banes, I'm not sure. Anyways, that army there on the right side did get cleaned up. Liberators over here will probably not live to tell this tale, as the Queens now are finally able to get some decent damage in. Although the Liberators, yeah, they still kill a couple of Queens there in the process too. Maru, though. He's got 4 bases up and running. Pumping out 2 of those siege tanks at once right now. I like it. Okay. Most of the Marines... Oh, Jimmy there. Laughs in the face of danger. Most of the Marines seem to be able to get on out of there. Zerg does have +2 here, but obviously no hive to be seen anywhere. In order for the Terran player to go into 3-3, all they need is an armory. In order to go for 3-3 as a Zerg, you need to go Infestation Pit into a hive, and then eventually into 3-3. So... There's definitely a bit of a disconnect. I would love to see the Terran player start off 3-3 right now, just to, yeah, continue building up that advantage. I don't know if he's aware of the fact that Zerg doesn't have a hive yet. I don't know when the last time is that he checked the main base, but... Fantastic situation right now for Maru. There's little mistakes being made here by the Zerg player, and very few mistakes made by the Terran player. Like, he's just so on point when it comes to microing these units, man. It's insane. He's definitely going to be able to kill this base, I think, with one of the future waves like that, right? It's only, like, one group of Marines away from, you know, being right-clicked on. There's finally the hive. I would like to see 3-3 start, though. I think Maru may be a little bit late on that. Those Banelings never rolled by into the expansion either. I mean, there's so many siege tanks set up. I don't think they're going to be able to get much done anyway. Bottom right in base will be the night before it even starts. There's 3-3. Okay. So there's, I think it could have been started like a minute ago. Maybe you wanted to max out first. Maybe it wasn't a mistake. Either way, there's like a good minute and a half or so of advantage there for Maru. And when you're fighting with these, you know, these small attacking units like Marines against small attacking units like, for example, Zerglings and Banelings, I mean, those upgrades are going to be so helpful. Scans right there do review at least some of the burrowed Banelings. Okay, Zerg decides to fight this off creep right now. He's probably expecting Terran to finish off 3-3 as well. Okay, that's a couple siege tanks down the drain. I was questioning that fight there for Serral initially, but that was actually pretty much perfect, considering the amount of supply that he's got. Considering the amount of supply we're on, though, 170 versus 130, you'd imagine that Zerg isn't going to be able to clean up these units as effectively. I guess Maru does have a supply. Yeah, he's got a lot of supply sitting at home in the form of siege tanks. I'm almost feeling that at this point, Terran could just unsiege all of the tanks and go in for the counterattack. Either way, that's not Maru's way. He doesn't like setting himself up to any vulnerabilities like that. So just over the course of about 10 minutes, Maru slowly disassembles his opponent's bases. And he does obtain a victory. And that takes us to Lightshade. So in both game number 1 and game number 2, Serral definitely made opportunities for himself, right? I think there were several moments in those games where he was actually ahead. But Maru just didn't die. I think most of the Terran players that Serral faces off against, they probably just roll over at that point, or they've taken a couple Marine hits here and there, and eventually their army is just too small. Even though Serral, especially in game number 2, dealt a bunch of eco damage there with those run-bys, and he found himself in I think a stronger economy as well against the 2-1-1 in general. At least compared to game number 1. He still wasn't really able to capitalize on that, and props to Maru, obviously, for, yeah, just not losing Marines. It's really easily said, but very difficult to actually pull off. Alright, so, Lightshade Ellie. I'm imagining 2000 Atmos was Serral's map pick. Then Oxide was Maru's, and I guess this one then is once again gonna be Serral's. Lightshade is a pretty good Zerg map. I say that, I don't think it really matters all too much. I know the Terran players usually don't pick this map. Let me look at the statistics real quick. Lightshade, LE, Liquipedia. They keep track of all of the pro games that are being played on this map. So for the Terran versus Zerg matchup at the pro level, there is a win rate of 49.2% for Terran players. So, yeah, ever so slightly in favor of Zerg. Probably, if you compare it to Oxide, for example, let me pull up the stats for Oxide as well. That's the previous map we were just on. So Oxide LE for Terran versus Zerg at the pro level has a win rate of 56.6% for Terran. Alright. Hatch, gas, pool. Depot, barracks, expo. And obviously a refinery there in the middle of it as well. And there's once again the second barracks. Huh. Okay. That's 3 for 3 right now. Maru going for the same build 3 times in a row. Interesting. I don't know if I like it, but interesting nonetheless. Looks like the third base will be acquired relatively easily once again for the Zerg. Delaying link speed a little bit this time around. So annoying already. Okay, well, maybe that was a little bit too ambitious, though, yeah. I don't think that's very good, actually. No, I don't think that's very good. If you just lose the Reaper right there, it's so tricky. Because, I mean, this is Serral we're talking about, so maybe it's not the biggest of deals. But say, hypothetically speaking, I mean, he hasn't even seen the third base for the Zerg, right? And obviously, if you're opening up 2-1-1, it's not like you can really do much. But for all he knows right now, there could not be a third base, and there could be like a Roach Warren already done, right? I mean, this is Serral, so I don't really expect, you know, that Maru expects his opponent to go. I mean, you get what I'm trying to get at. Then again, I guess the 2-1-1 opener is really nice. I actually, I've been advising people that want to start with StarCraft 2 with the Terran pieces in this matchup. I've been advising people for a long time to play the 2-1-1 every single one of your games. Of Terran versus Zerg, that is. Just because it's a really strong build to not die to stupid stuff. So most of the Zerg 2-base all-ins, say for example with Roaches and Ravagers, usually they hit at about 5 minutes in-game time. And that's also the time where Terrans will finish up their, you know, 60 Marines, 2 Medevacs, and Stimpack. So, you know, if your opponent decides to attack you right into the 2-1-1, it's pretty much perfect, right? You want to face them, but instead you get to fight on your own turf off creep. Pretty good. Anyhow. Yeah, I think I've said everything that there is to be said about these openers. It's the only downside when you play players that play very standard. Although, yeah, it is interesting that he's decided to not go for 1-1-1 so far in this series. On Lightshade, even though it might not be the best Terran map, there are some really good siege tank spots. So say, for example, Zerg players these days, especially when they go for the low ground third base, they like to take their expansion, their fourth base, at the 12 o'clock position. Generally speaking, if Terran manages to get siege tanks on this high ground and the rocks are not down, they can, like, go through this choke point, deny the creep, and essentially cut off the queens from the 4th base. So maybe that's why Serral will decide to go. I don't know. I'm actually kind of curious to see where Serral's going to take his next expansion. Either way, here's once again those Marines going across the map inside of their little planes. There's once again the lair. Once more, the Baneling nest. We have a whole load of queens out already as well. Deja vu. Different map, but same game. Pretty much. That's a very quick armory. Okay. I like the little sport crawler, actually. Even though there's no Liberator harassment, or Liberator harassment rather, in this game. There's not even a 4th base yet, by the way. Yeah, okay, so Serral is going to take the expo up here. So it's double factory as a follow-up right now from Maru. And he does have the armory already coming up. Double NG Bay eventually as well, though. Curious to see what he's going to make out of these double factories for now. I would like to see a mech transition. That would be sick. But judging by the double NG Bay, that's not going to happen. Guess it's going to be some sort of timing attack. Okay. Just a whole lot of Widow Mines? Is that the idea? Yeah. So we're skipping out on the siege tanks this time around. I think. Or maybe he's going to produce like 1 siege tank at once. Get the tech lab for drilling claws. Now he's going to produce 3 Widow Mines at once here instead. So the drilling claws upgrade, that's already being researched. Normally we don't see that one until much later on. It basically allows the Widow Mines to burrow very quickly and then remain cloaked as well, right? So it's a very powerful upgrade. And Terran players, I mean, they've got a lot of practice executing Widow Mine drops, especially against Protals, for many, many years. Zerg players don't have nearly as much practice defending, once again, defending against those Widow Mine drops. So Protals players, I mean, they've been Widow Mine dropped a gajillion times. Zerg players, though, it's only a relatively new addition to this matchup for Terran players too. Yep, there it is. 4 of those mines inside of a plane, ready to go across. It's very easy to, like, deal damage with this if, well, unless you fly straight over the creep. The creep spread, by the way, on this side of the map, insane. Serral at this point hasn't spotted the Medivac yet. But the problem is, right, after game number 1 and 2, you kind of expect this at this point to be just a bunch of Marines. Maru, by the way, almost a little bit impressed right there with the creep spread. Yeah, Lynx are already running over in this direction. Sport Crawler over there in the back too, so Serral is setting himself up for the defense. Widow Mine drop over here. Okay, not getting a whole lot of work done. Widow Mine drop over here. They burrow so quickly, man. Good defense so far. There's still 1 inside of the Medivac in the main base as well. That one also burrows, and there's no response here by the Zerg. Yeah, he's busy putting out 17 fires at once. And what was perfectly defended here initially is now 11 worker kills. There's still 2 Widow Mines over at the 3rd base. Serral hasn't cleaned those up. Oh, God, they're going to fire again. Oh, okay. I mean, we're in a very similar situation to game number 1 and 2. Except this time around, it is a significant advantage. Okay, well, that's kind of helpful, I guess. Good guy Maru felt a bit guilty. That's, you know, it's something. Anyways, yeah, this time around, there's a significant economical advantage here for the Terran player. I mean, Serral now powering out the workers. He realizes what's up. Decides to go for the Hydralisk Den a little bit quicker as well, which I really like. The nice advantage of going Hydras is that they outrange Widow Mines. So usually if you go for Hydraling Bane against Widow Mine Marine, it's kind of difficult to die. Like, you can kind of stay alive for quite some time. Obviously, Hydras kind of suck, though, against siege tanks. So I wouldn't mind the transition on over towards siege tanks again if it's going to be heavy Hydras. Either way. Alright. A lot of losses there for the Zerg player, but he has been rebuilding his economy. It does reflect right now, though, in the army supply count especially, right? So it's 86 versus 66 supply right now. 2-2 is starting up. 2-2 is starting up as well on the other side of the map. Yeah, Maru tends to leave a lot of units behind to try and defend. So that's a little bit annoying. There's another Widow Mine drop, by the way. Pesky little Widow Mine drops. What I'm trying to get at is that if Maru had his entire army over here, there definitely is a chance for him to go in for the win. But he's always leaving a lot of units behind to try and not die. Okay, slowly, steadily. Moving forward. Widow Mine still in the top left-hand corner of the map. Big hits right there on the Zerg army. The queens are, yeah, capable of transfusing each other, but now the creep spread is disappearing over here, which makes it all the while more difficult for the Zerg player to engage. He really needs an Overseer here. Okay, the Overseer does come up, and those units will end up going down. I think the medevac may have gotten picked off as well. Okay, so at least Serral seems to be... Well, he seems to be able to breathe here for about 5 seconds as Terran comes back in for more. Maru, absolutely relentless, adding on a lot of Marauders right now too, which I love. Look at that, microing only back the Marines. The Banelings right there explode on the Marauders, and that's exactly what Maru brought them in for. At this point, that was once again an extremely efficient trade for the Terran player. His army is looking absolutely massive. A couple of Banelings, though, can change that in a heartbeat. Lurker Den, by the way, is a transition. Hive also coming up here for Serral. So if he can hold on for a little while longer, eventually he's going to get Lurkers out, which will shut down this play. This tempo advantage, right, for the Terran player for, yeah, for good, I think. That being said, Maru, he's got intentions of finishing off this expansion, but at this point, there's almost more Medivacs than Terran bio units. Okay, good transfusion right there as well by Serral. These guys are insanely good. The creep spread, though, man. It's so hard for the Zerg to actually go off creep. Serral right now with 1,000 minerals in the bank. He's been forced to pull all of the queens to the front. He really needs to rebuild a couple of those so he can start injecting once again. Yeah, with that much money in the bank, Maru is just going to be able to overwhelm that Zerg army. And that means that in today's best-of-5 series, it's Maru who wins 3-0 over Serral. If you enjoyed watching this video, do me a favor, hit the like button down below. And if you want to see more, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get notified as soon as future videos go live. For now, though, I want to thank you for watching. Have a great day. Don't forget to smile, and I'll see you once again in the next one.